All right. We're off to the races.
I think the room got deleted, man. I don't know what's going on. I just went
No,
into.
I think we I think you did what I did yesterday when I scheduled the live event, right? Which was I didn't look at the time and the day, and I accidentally initially scheduled it for like 6 something yesterday when I was setting up the link, and then I had to cancel it and redo it. And it looked like it was scheduled to start at 9 and not
Oh, okay.
9:30.
I'm gonna have to go through that and check it out. Well, then it's gonna be weird because I'm sure that I just went right in and restarted and opened the room, so I'm sure it's gonna be weird, man.
I mean, we'll figure it out. We'll get through it.
'Tis life, that happens. What's up, Brian P. Swift? What's up, Austin, man? This is not the smartest guys in the room. So we talk about media, publishing, Chat GPT, Microsoft taking over that. So we're talking it all, video content creation. Go on.
I got to say, Microsoft taking on Chat GPT, I think, and integrating it into their search engines is gonna be a real challenge for Google to overcome. I genuinely think, and one of the ways I'm thinking about using Chat GPT and the way I have been using it in the last couple of weeks is really as a research tool. I think it's pretty powerful as a research tool and really interesting to use in that way. I think Microsoft taking that over is going to create some issues for Google in terms of their sort of ranking as the number one search engine in the world. What do you think? I see you nodding. Have you been using it as a research tool too?
Yeah, that's what I'd say. And although they will admit that they can't tell you if the information is fact or like, is it biased in some way. But as far as a basic, get me some information on this and I will continue to do research from there. But if I wanted to really whittle down quickly research, so we've been using it a lot for screenplays and just using the basics, a 3-act structure, that kind of thing. Okay, for 3-act structure, this, does this meet these specifications, that kind of thing. So but then like, if you were just content creating, that's what they say, like for content creators, well, here you got this subject where if you're looking to create, hey, 50 new tips on video creation, well, 50 things people are doing to create videos in 2023. Well, you could have that in 10 seconds. And wherever you go with it, you go from there. Hey, first off, not the smartest guys in the room. Sorry if you can't find the room. I don't know if I deleted it, reset it up, whatever. So we're going to ping some people and stuff like that. But the subject we're talking, I've been having these publishing conversations lately where people are like so anti like this complete self-publishing, or they're so anti-traditional or anti this hybrid model. So there's benefits to each one of them. If anybody wants to go down that path, we can. Chat GPT, Microsoft worked with Chat GPT. So Chat GPT actually sold some components to Microsoft for what they're doing. And there's Google's in it now too. So that's just going to cruise fast, but reels, shorts, all this stuff. We're going to talk it all. Traditional radio, books, what our friend Brian P. Swift is doing. Brian P. Swift has a radio show. Imagine that, a radio show today. Brian, are you going into the studio?
I will be in the studio today. So it's very cool, probably old school, and people may think it's a waste. I don't know what people's feelings are on radio, but I had an opportunity, and I'm going into my first year with it. It's WJOL 1340 AM, and if you're not out of the Chicagoland area, if you're out of the Chicagoland area, you could live stream it. But we talk about all things inspirational, a lot of leadership, business, just inspirational people, inspirational stories. and I didn't do it to make money, and I didn't do it to get tons of, in radio, you really can't track it, tons of likes and loves and clicks and follows. Sometimes I believe in life, and maybe we've lost this, you do things just because it seems to be the right thing, and without expecting anything back. I think that's a novel concept, like to actually put yourself out and to do something without expecting something back. I'm complete.
Thank you, Swifty. And I listen to radio all the time when I'm driving in my car, and makes me think about books and video. Are there certain things that are never going to go away? You know, there is always going to be time where I'm in my car and I like what's going on there. Tom, you think there's things that are never going to go away, that are just, it's, yeah, could you tweak it and things like that? Go on.
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, honestly, I can't think of the last time I listened to the radio. So I think it's a matter of use case. Like, is usage going to change over time? Absolutely. And I think in order for things to persist, i.e., like traditional radio, to persist, they have to adapt their business model, right? So you can't, as technology changes, the way people consume content is going to continually change, right? Podcasts weren't a thing, really 10 years ago. They were just at their very beginning, in their infancy, and most people hadn't even heard of a podcast 10 years ago. Now, people listen to more podcasts than radio by far, right? So things change over time, and I think the question as to whether or not things remain is how nimble and adaptable those industries are willing to be. If they're trying to hold on to an old system and an old model that used to work 10 years ago, 20 years ago, then likely they're not going to be around long term. If they're willing to adapt to the current climate and the way people use technology and the way people use media and consume content, then yeah, I think they'll stick around. So it's really up to the individual businesses and the industries, more than it is a question of whether or not it's possible. That's what I think.
Fair. Now let me ask you.
Tom,
go on, Brian.
Tom, I totally agree with you. And this station, WJOL, has been around for 93 years. And the way they adapted was to stop, to I guess, shorten or narrow their scope of what they talked about to be more local. Like, they don't talk about stuff that happened in the city. I mean, I'm not saying it might not come on as a blip, but what they did is they got extremely local, and they support and they highlight, strictly within, I don't know, maybe a 20-mile radius, 30-mile radius, which 60, 70,000 people. And I think that is one of the things, to your point, how do you adapt? Because we're ever changing. And they've adapted, and stations thriving because of that adaptation of, people out there in the suburbs. They're not that concerned about what happens in the city or what happens 75 miles away, maybe, with especially negative news. So adaptation is what is going to help all of us either move forward or get swallowed up. I'm complete.
Yeah, I think what I'd be curious about actually is like digging into their demographics and who their demographics are, like who their representative demographics are, and what they're doing to win over a younger demographic. Because at the end of the day, every demographic comes with a timestamp. So if you're targeting people above 65, well, people above 65, are above 65. Like, let's be real, right? People above 65 have less life left than people who are 30, right? Generally speaking. So as a demographic, like, what do you do? Like, I'd be curious to see what they're doing to win over younger listeners and a younger demographic, because that's also going to be integral to long-term viability for that business model.
I agree. And I
Interesting.
don't know. You know what? I'm going in today. Um, if I could catch the head of I usually don't run into him every day, but I'm going to have to ask him because that might be a little niche there that we might have some opportunity in. Because, as Dom knows, I am such a fan of Gen X and Gen Z.
Yeah, well, you are, Brian. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. I was
Well,
looking.
no, but I mean, I joke about that, but to Tom's point, he's 100% legit. I mean, and it's a great question. And, with going in, I'm going to have to pop that out to him. So if I hear anything, I will let you know on the next episode.
All right, keep us posted, Brian. You are our finger to the pulse of that. I saw a post today. Somebody posted about the uniforms their kids had to wear, and Brian was like, "In my day, we would have kicked their butts for wearing whatever for wearing pajamas to school." So you are our pulse when it comes to that
Well, no, what
that
I said
line right
was that,
there.
yeah, I mean, we had to wear black pants or blue pants when we had to wear a shirt and tie. And I went to a parochial school. So that, these kids, and I see it in my own neighborhood, and I have dragged my own kids back inside to change. Going to school in sweats is not proper. That is just my opinion. Um, it's a, especially in high school. I mean, it's a learning atmosphere, and dress appropriately. And I mean, they would have gotten wiped up by I was taught by the Christian Brothers of Ireland, and way different world back then. I get it, um, but interesting because I see these kids go to school now, and I'm shocked that their parents let them out the way they're dressed. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
from
I got young kids. It's hard to control them. But hey, I want to ask you guys a question. So I listen to the radio when I'm in my car. Like last night, I was listening to Pitt basketball, and I listen to I got 12 channels program. I have a Jeep, a 2008 Jeep that has like big tires and stuff like that. And I have it because it's like it's other than the outside, it's not updated. So I got my 12 stations on there. Am I the only one still listening to the radio? Like, is that like Tom said, he doesn't listen. And so when you're in your car, I want to know if you're in this room right now, Flash, if you're in your car, what do you do if you're not listening to the radio? Do you automatically like plug your iPhone up and like, so what, how, Tom, what's this process or anybody else, Flash, if you're not listening to the radio?
Yeah, I mean, it's
I'm
it's
on the
it's
other side.
very straightforward for me. Um, I listen to podcasts, right? So the thing I like about it is like I kind of treat podcasts like radio on demand. So for me, I get to pick what I want to listen to. I get to pick the subject material. I get to pick who I listen to, when I listen to them, and I have a series of podcasts that I like to listen to. So yeah, I mean that's what and it depends on what mood I'm in, right? So I'm not beholden to. It's sort of the Netflix to your broadcast cable, right? The difference is I get to decide what I want to watch when I want to watch it, as opposed to having to be beholden to the broadcast schedule. So I get to listen to whatever I want whenever I want, and that's what I do. I mean, that's when I listen to, and sometimes I listen to music, but more often than not, it's podcasts.
Okay. So Heather, you flashed on this too, but tell me this process. So I got my iPhone and then I hook it up to this. I have this wireless thing in my Jeep, so it plays it from there. But are you really going in when you're driving down the road and being like navigating through your phone? Is that what goes on? So
I am a huge music lover. I've been playing musical instruments my whole entire life: piano, bass, clarinet, singing, chimes, the whole thing. I so my when my I first got my car because I'm also a huge car nerd. It came with Sirius XM satellite radio, and I love like the EDM electronic dance music. So that's channel 51, 52, 53, I think, on Sirius XM. And then there's like Shade 45, which is Shade 45, which is shady, which is rap. But yeah, like I'll have my preset stations on Sirius satellite radio. I do not listen to FM AM. Sometimes if I'm traveling, but again, if I'm traveling to like Maryland past Baltimore, the stations change. So I'm usually on XM satellite radio. If I don't have that, if it's not free, sometimes it's free on like 4th of July, I'm constantly in my Spotify. I'll like a song. So there's this one, Golden Hour by Jake, and I love it. It's just like, it's beautiful, like the piano. But then I'll go listen to that song's station, because each song has its own station that gives the same vibe of the song that you're listening to. So I'm able to find new music that I really love, and kind of like go down that rabbit hole. Oh, I love this song. Okay, I'm going to listen to that radio station. I'm going to listen to the whole album that was released. I'm going to listen to this whole entire discography of the artist. So I love Spotify. I was on Pandora. Pandora is ancient. Spotify is definitely where it's at.
All about the books.
Oh, okay,
All
go
about
on,
the
Aaron.
books.
What do you got going on?
No, I was going to say I'm all about the books. Audible is in like the most convenient place for me. So, I mean, it depends on my day. Like right now, for me, the island of Pavuvu was um, was raided back in 1943 when we were fighting in the Pacific. And right now, I'm listening to "With the Old Breed" by E.B. Sledge, who was part of the documentary or the mini series that they did with the Pacific that was all about the Marines and their fighting out there. So just different times, different pieces. But I feel like, I don't know, I'm a big book person. I mean, radio in a lot of ways is just full of advertisements and played out. And it's just, there's no way to skip it. There's no way to get around it. It's just annoying to hear. Obviously it's necessary because it's revenue, but you know, it's just, you get what you pay for, and you don't pay for radio really. You just pay for the advertisements to hear it. Unless it's satellite.
Fair, brother. So now tell me process. So when you get in your car, you like plug into your something, or does it automatically take over, or how's that work?
I have it set that it just picks up whatever I was listening to last is what's going to pull up right there, and usually go for it. So if it's for me, it's always, I just plug right in and boom, done. My book is there. I just slap it on and enjoy my time. You got to be careful with the books, though. I feel there are some books and different narrators and different readers that are, their voices are just very like soothing or relaxing. So you know, falling asleep is definitely something that could happen. You got to be careful with that. But you know, reading books or listening to books is more my thing as of late. At least for the last year or so, it's been that way.
Thank you, Aaron, man. I started reading Matthew McConaughey's book like that, and he was so like dramatic. I can't listen to this. And then I read it and I was like, man, I loved it. You know, I toned down the dramaticism. Tom's looking at me like I'm nuts here. So we're on the live stream. So Tom, what do you got to say? Say what you want to say.
What I'm trying to figure out is if you're trying to understand what people listen to, or you're trying to get tips on how to connect your phone to your car. Because it kind of sounds like you're trying to figure out how to connect your phone to your car.
I told you I got an old Jeep, so it's not going to work anyway. But what I don't understand is this phone is this small little thing. So I'm driving 20 minutes and I don't want to listen to the same thing the whole time I'm driving. So then I feel like I'm going to be looking off the road, staring at my phone and be in a ditch somewhere. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Playlists, my friend, playlists. Like that's what I do is with podcasts, because obviously like if I've got a long drive, like a podcast might be, sometimes they're 15, 20 minutes, sometimes they're hours, right? It depends on the podcast. So if I know like I've got a podcast, like what I do is I just create a playlist in my podcast app, and you can do this in Apple Podcasts, you can do this in Spotify. I'm sure you can do it in other apps too. I know how to do it in those two apps personally, but I just create a playlist and let the playlist run. So when one podcast ends, the next one starts. And to your point, then I'm not fiddling around with my phone and doing something unsafe while I'm driving. But yeah, I mean, I use Apple CarPlay. Like that's how I listen to everything. That's how I use navigation in my car. It's all through my phone. So my phone is connected to my head unit. So I can actually change podcasts on my head unit too. I don't have to actually touch my phone to do it. So same way you would switch radio stations on in your Jeep, I can switch podcasts in my truck. So just depends on how you've implemented technology. But yeah, I just thought it was funny because I was sitting here and I was like, I'm not sure what he's actually trying to figure out. Is he's trying to figure out what people are listening to, or like looking for tips on how to connect his phone to his Jeep?
I have a question for Tom.
Go on.
Tom, if you had a radio show, how would you gear it towards the young adults and youth of today? Or is it even worth the time?
I mean, honestly, I would make sure that my radio show is also released as a podcast. I don't know how much traction you're going to capture with, you know, kid, like, cause let's be honest, like if you're looking to target like young people, odds are if they are driving, they're using either Android or Android Auto or Apple CarPlay in their vehicles, because most cars, most newer cars come standardized with those features, right? So odds are they're probably using one of those features in their vehicle to listen to content, right? Odds are they're also using an app to stream that content over their phone through their car stereo system. So I would say I would release my radio show as a podcast in conjunction with broadcasting it over the air. And then also I would look at making sure that my radio station was also carried on various streaming apps that stream live radio. So I can't think of a name of one off the top of my head, but I know there are apps that actually stream live radio that you can use to listen to radio on your phone. So I would make sure that my radio show was also going out over apps like that as well. But yeah, I'd release it as a podcast. I think it's a super simple, easy thing to do. If you're recording the radio show anyway, just record it live and put the live broadcast out as a podcast later. Yeah, iHeartRadio in the chat. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name because there's no chance I wouldn't butcher it. So I'm just going to go with Nee. Yeah, Nee says iHeartRadio. Dr. Tachi says TuneIn Radio. So yeah, it's, there are definitely apps out there that would do that, but I would make sure that it's carried on those apps and that I'm releasing it as a podcast. I think that's the best way. And then the most important key is make sure the content you're putting out appeals to that audience and is valuable to them, not just appeals to them, not just like fits, what some construct is of what they consume, but is valuable to them, that they will find value in. That's the real key, is if they find value in it and you can get it in front of some of them, they will go and in search of it and they will listen to it and consume it wherever it is. But you have to make sure it's valuable to that demographic, or else it doesn't matter where you put it out, they're never going to consume it.
Tom, thank you so much for all that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey,
My pleasure.
Good stuff, Tom. And I want to jump on that just in a second. So this is shameless plug here. So I'm on a regional cable show called Bikes and Hikes. And so Bikes and Hikes, they air it in this south part of the state. Then they air it on it's through Armstrong, and then they air it on the other states that Armstrong is in. Then they put the show on YouTube, on their YouTube channels, because you're like, well, how do you get younger? Well, I would think probably just as many houses are watching the local cable channel or channel 110, or as they're watching like the YouTubes. And then now this younger generation, they watch YouTube. We're on YouTube. We make reels, we make TikTok. So it's components of that. And to your earlier question, Brian, the cable company, it was a cable company. Now it is an internet company. They sell internet and broadband and things like that. So the company has evolved to the point where it's internet based, and they're starting to understand, like, they're creating the kind of thing like what do they call it, like a channel like omni-channel. So kind of like a Netflix version of all their shows and things like that. So there's an evolution there. But to get younger, think about all those things that they've already done. And could a radio station do the same thing? Yeah. Could your radio station be on YouTube? Yes. Streaming on all these places? Yes. Could it be could you condense some of those into clips, the best 30 seconds clip, and put them in those other places? Absolutely. So, okay, let's continue this. I'll quit plugging. Yeah, go on, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, you know, I've said this before. I've been saying this for like, God, probably about 10 years now. And I'm going to say it here. I don't know if I've said it in this space before or on the show. I don't think I've said it definitely since we rebranded to Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. But I'm gonna get in the prediction game, which is dangerous. But I've been saying this for like 10 years publicly to whoever will listen. But the cable companies are a dying business. And what I mean by that is rebroadcasters, which is basically what they are dying out. And over time, we're already seeing this shift happen. But when cable internet started, my prediction then, and I still stand by this today, is that cable companies are eventually going to get out of the television business and are simply going to become internet service providers. Period. End of story. That is the future. The broadcast cable as we know it is a dying business. And I saw this from the inside when I worked in television production, in my interaction with cable networks. But I'm telling you that I believe that over time, companies like Armstrong, Cablevision, ultimately, all they're going to be is internet service providers. And they may have some programming of their own that they're streaming over their internet service, but there will be no sort of quote unquote broadcast television. The separation between those two things is vanishing quickly and is going to ultimately completely disappear. But yeah, so if I had to get in the prediction game, that's my prediction that's all going away. It's all going to be on demand on the broadcast like video side. It's all going to be on demand content.
All right. Hey, no, just sidebar, $7 million for a commercial, a 30-second commercial at the Super Bowl. Is that crazy or what? Oh, not the smartest guys in the room. We're moving on here. We're going to meet some people. You can ask a question, drop a tip, and we're going to go right from Aaron, Joyce, Heather. We make sure we talk to some people that are here. We got some experts here, so we'll keep this conversation going. You can talk about whatever these subjects that we've talked about right now we were talking about chat GPT. We're talking about what this omnipresence, what things are going to go away, what's going to stay. So ask a question, share a tip, whatever you got. Aaron, go on, my man.
Actually, let's come back to me. I got a diaper situation here.
Diaper, that's the worst, man. Okay, especially those first couple diapers, that meconium, weirdest stuff. Okay, Joyce, what do you got going on?
That's a funny topic. Good morning. I do listen to radio. I'm old. I listen to NPR for most part, and I guess I do listen to the podcast because I use their app and listen to the shows that way. TV. What else were you talking about? I can't remember. That's all I. That's all I had to add.
Okay, hey, well, you do that. I don't think you have to say that you're old. That's just the best. What I believe, and this is what business model, motivation champs. I believe everybody gets their content in a different way. People, so I'm in inspiration, motivation. People take their inspiration and motivation like medicine, different doses, different ways. So somebody is taking that through regular radio. Somebody's taking it through screenplays. Somebody's taking it through Clubhouse. Somebody's taking it. So it's not wrong to be in one of these places if you think your message plays in that market or that's how you do things. But
I mean, as a human, I feel like it's overwhelming. Honestly, I keep, so I am 57, so I can remember a time when I was bored and stuff wasn't open and there wasn't 1,000 things to do every day. And when I get overwhelmed with all the information coming at me, I have to remember that I could exist that way. But, there's whole generations that don't even know it's a possibility. So I don't think I consume media the way a lot of people do. I just don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of YouTubes. I'm in my head a lot. I don't know, maybe just because of who I am, but trying to figure out how to get my content out has been a challenge because I feel like I don't consume it the way a lot of people do. So I'm very focused on a few things. I said this earlier, a few things deeper. I'm really invested in LinkedIn. I think it's a really great place for cannabis. They accept us, and it's a great place for podcasting. And I'm a little old-fashioned just in terms of connecting emails. I'm really trying to connect with people that way. So I'm kind of focused on two things. And then the distribution of my content, that is a challenge, obviously. So I like listening to what you talk about and how people find their stuff. And I'm on a mission to crush the stigma around cannabis and women and caregivers. So the more people who hear me, the better. So thank you. I'm complete.
Hey Joyce, go on with your bad self, and there's nothing wrong with doing something good, right? You could home run hitters are good at hitting home runs, or there's a doctor's good at doing what they're good at. Is that wrong? Specializing in something? So we will continue. Heather, what do you got for us? You got a tip? You got a question, or you just want to stir the pot with something? Have at it.
Morning, Tom, everybody else. I just want to give an update. Last week I was here talking about a client that I've been with for a long time, and I was having some issues. But we had a combo, and she's not paying as much as she should, but we've come to an agreement, and she was very open and honest about everything, and so yay. That's taken care of. And I've also put some boundaries up too, which she's totally able to abide by. So feeling good about that. So I just wanted to give you an update, and know your worth and fight for it, because there's going to be people out there who don't want to pay you what you're worth, and take advantage of the fact that you may not know what you're worth. So just stick to your guns, fight for what you want, and don't be afraid to go after it. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Tom's shaking his head here, so good job. Did anything we talked about last week help you?
Yeah. And I actually gathered all of the because I've been working with her since 2014. And so I gathered all my numbers and did inflationary costs and spending and all that stuff. And brought that into the meeting. So that was helpful. And, it's difficult to cut ties with such a long-term client, but also somebody who you've known literally since high school. I was in the marching band. And I was a flagger color guard. I was also the color guard captain. And the individual who I worked with, who's been my client now since 2014, she was the palm captain. So we've been literally working together since high school. So it's kind of hard to be honest with yourself and honest with somebody that you have long history with. But we're women in business. We're trying to work with one another, and you guys did give me the confidence to actually speak up and say something, and have that phone call, so I appreciate it.
That's awesome. I was just sitting here the whole time going did you fire her? Did you fire her? Did you fire her?
No, I got more money. I got more money.
Hey, that's also a good outcome. So I'm glad to hear, super glad to hear that some of the things that were shared last week helped in your pursuit of working to remedy that situation. I hope you're happier. Sounds like you're happier with the state of affairs in that relationship, and I hope things continue positively for you. And
Thanks, Tom.
yeah, absolutely. And like Heather said, take it from her, know your worth and fight for it, right? Be an advocate for yourself, because if you won't advocate for yourself, no one else ever will, right? So make sure you're an advocate for yourself. Make sure that you know your worth and you fight for it. And I'm glad you did that, Heather. Congratulations.
Thank you. And even before I got on the phone, because I also had another fight that I was dealing with in mediation, and that came out to a wonderful conclusion. So I'm like, you know what? If I can go up against the individual who I have PTSD around, in mediation and the outcome be good, then, you know, I can certainly speak to, you know, somebody who I've known for a very long time and explain and remedy the situation. So yeah, all good things, as Olaf would say.
Thank you, Heather. We appreciate you, and I'm glad it worked out. Stay the course. It has me wondering, Simon. We're going to Simon. I was in Simon's room yesterday, and there's a lot of good spaces on this app, and he was really talking some people that were hurting through some things, man. And I'm just sitting there and really enjoying the conversation and just appreciating the way he was letting them know it was all right, whatever their feelings were, that they didn't have to hide them or anything like that. But what I wanted to ask you, Simon, based on Heather, I'm in this thought process thinking that confrontation's okay. Like thinking, is there another way to say that? Like Heather was able to speak to this person and then work out have a dialogue, but she had this almost like anxiety about this conversation. What would you, can you tackle that, or am I clear? Like, is confrontation okay? Is there a better way, a better word than confrontation? Go on, my friend.
Hi, Dominic. The first thing I wanted to say was when we all end up in houses, we're going to be called house because there's going to be no clubs anymore. So I wonder if the name will change. Anyway, yes, because the way that I help and support people is in a change. Basically, it comes down to a change of terminology and belief system. So you said confrontation. I would use conflict resolution or resolving conflict, because I know from personal experience, because of difficult things that happened to me in childhood, which is childhood abuse and the difficult things, I used to go in the opposite direction to keep me safe. And I realized that I wasn't tackling. I call it tackling. I wasn't tackling with it. I wasn't dealing with it. It wouldn't go away. I then became a people pleaser. So when there was conflict, I would basically give in and I would do anything so that there wouldn't be that. The way that I deal with it now is I absolutely go towards it. So I go towards conflict. I also use something which is called a courageous conversation. And that is kind of like writing down, here is how I feel, then going to the person saying, I would like to ask you about this. And can you give me some time? I then read it from my own perspective. So I don't point fingers on them. I say, this is how I feel. This is how I feel. This is what I feel when that happened. And then give the opportunity for the other person and say, okay, if you've now heard me, how do you feel? And I find that the way that when I do that with people, it brings it down. Because if certain terminology and words are used, like it can become such an emotional thing. And I bring it down to out of that big emotional place. So it's like going from head to heart. So I often say to people, like on Twitter, if you're in that difficult place. So for me, when I trained in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, there's two highest intents of emotions. There's love and there's fear. I'm coming from a place of fear. That's anger and all of these difficult things, rage, jealousy. Then I say to people, it's probably best not to post. Or if you're going to post, you do this thing where you have this golden hour where you step back. And then when you come back at it and reread it again, so I type it out, then reread it again, it looks completely different because all of our emotional lives and the difficult things that have happened to us, you can bring that back down again. So for me, I used to avoid conflict, all kind of conflict, but I don't go into it in a confrontational way. Because for me, it would say, oh, I'm going to confront somebody. It's going to be confrontational. It's the way that it's framed, the conversation's framed. I'm going to go and have a conversation with somebody because I feel this way and I would like to be heard. So for me, it's the way that it's framed and the conversation you may hear me having are where somebody is probably in that heightened place and we bring them down to this less heightened place. They receive the learning then if they choose to receive the learning. And then when they go to these things, they're not in that heightened place. They're coming from their own place of power. So again, a lot of people who've had difficult backgrounds will want to go straight to that place. Oh, somebody said something to me, right? I've got to respond in this way. And with me, it's like, well, you don't have to do that. You can choose to bring that emotional down, bring the fear down, bring the emotion down, and get it to a place where you can then go to the person so that you have the power. And the power is actually, I'm going to be calm and I'm not going to use language which is going to inflate that conversation. So then they may feel a little bit better. And then you say, I would like to be seen and I would like to be heard. Can you please listen to me? So again, for me, always language is always, can you please? It's always conciliatory rather than confrontational. So for me, I absolutely go towards it. I only did that piece of work last year. Every time when I feel conflict's coming up now, I think, right, that's a conversation. What's that conversation? What it's going to look like? And the majority of the people I've spoken to in that terminology, I'd like to have a conversation with you about something that I feel. They've said, oh, okay, then, kind of thing. And, oh, I didn't realize you felt that way. Or, oh, thank you for letting me know because now I can do something. Rather than some who will go in like a bull in a china shop and be pointing fingers and angry and this and other. Notwithstanding, people can be. But what's the expectation then will be if you're putting that onto somebody, don't be turning around and going, well, why they're not getting angry? If you go in and you have a game plan and you speak to them from your place of reference and they are then calmer, then you're probably going to get more of a resolution rather than going into it as a conflict or a confrontation. So confrontation for me is you're coming from a place of fear. To have a discussion, an open discussion about feelings, you are wanting to resolve conflict and you're wanting to deal with conflict. So I don't know if that helps.
Go on, Tom. It did. I actually wrote down courageous conversations. Go on, Tom.
So I think whenever we're dealing with conflict like this, like, what Heather was talking about last week, and we're just kind of expounding on that, right? And kind of broadening things out and talking about whenever you're kind of dealing with a sort of a conflicting relationship or a conflicting situation where you have to have a conversation that's built or that's grown out of conflict. Those conversations always carry emotional baggage with them, right? It's kind of the way it goes. There's no avoiding it. You're having that conversation. That conflict has dredged up some kind of emotional response in you. You're frustrated. You're angry. You're disappointed. You're, pick whatever the case may be. What I try to do whenever I have to have those kinds of conversations, and actually what I think Heather did when she talks about getting all of her numbers in order and doing calculations based on inflation rates and, trying to demonstrate to this person what they should have been paying and how much of a break they were actually getting, is to be a little bit dispassionate about it, right? And sort of pull some of, obviously that conversation is motivated by an emotional reaction, but it's also motivated by a factual or a set of facts, right? And so I try to be a little bit dispassionate and I try to lead with the sort of factual basis of that conflict rather than the emotional result of that conflict so that you can come out with a better results. You don't end up escalating the situations. You don't end up with tempers flaring, things like that. Is to just try to be a little bit dispassionate about that interaction and just approach it from a more factual basis and try to pull some of the emotional response out of it. Don't let the emotion dictate how you present your sort of case to that person. That's just what I try to do. I think dispassionate is kind of the best word I can think of to describe it. But yeah, just try to dial it down, be a little bit robotic when it comes to the emotion in that conflict, and really focus on the numbers. I think is kind of a good way to do it, like Heather did. So just I don't know. For what it's worth, that's what I wanted to throw in after listening to what Simon had to say. That's all.
Okay, got it, brother. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Simon. Okay, Julie, we got something important for you. If Julie's around, Julie, you've been not the smartest guys in the room before. You're a big part of it. We need you to reset this room. I've lost. I get things when I'm in control. I start talking about weird stuff. So, Julie, can you help me out there? Are you around? Can you do
I'm
this?
here.
Okay,
First
we need you.
okay. Well, I like to be needed, so you pressed the right button. everybody, I want to first of all, thank you, Jessica Dalby. Hey, Dimple. Oh my gosh, Sloan's here, Dr. Tachi. Share the room. Let's get these like not so smart guys to learn even more, because that is really the purpose of this room. It's my favorite room on Clubhouse every Wednesday morning. I know you guys are big fans, but the truth is that they dedicate a lot of time to teaching us things too. So the more people we have here, the more we learn. And today, I thought we were talking about media, but we're talking about Gen X. We're talking about like Kyra's huge win this week, because I remember that last week when she was chatting about it. And they're building this community, this amazing community. So let's share the room. Let's see how many. We only have 6 shares, 62 people, 25 people here right now. Come on, everybody. If you like Tom and Dom just a little bit, can you do that for them? And there we go. Back to Tom and Dom.
Julie, that was good stuff. We appreciate you. So, Julie, with this media casters that I'm sure someday Julie's going to sell this company for like billions of dollars. What tip would you give us in this room for sharing your story or marketing yourself that you think maybe this is my sweet spot, something I could give to people?
That's a really broad question. That's a really broad question.
Come
But let me
on,
know.
give us a tip. A tip.
Well, first of all, I want to know, like, I'm guessing when we were talking about the radio, I don't think anyone has kids here, because I never get to listen to anything because they take over the radio with their Bluetooth. So, yeah. Sharing your story. Just do it. There are so many ways you can do it. Be inventive, unpack from the end game. Why do you want to share it? And then work from there, because you have a story, I have a story. Our stories are ever changing. And it can look like being on a radio guest on Brian P. Swift's radio show. It can be starting a podcast, a book. It can be starting a magazine. Like, that's super fun. I've been dabbling in the magazine biz lately. It can be an autobiography, a biography. It can just be, calling up a friend and sharing the story. It is a way to monetize, to build your brand if you want it to. And then remember, it doesn't have to be as difficult as you really think it's going to be in your head. And take advantage of things like ChatGPT and Bard, the new wonder kids of AI. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Julie. All this stuff, all these things we talk about, you use them, you figure out some. It was Prof T the other day. She said, I control them, they don't control me. Wow, great. Just so powerful. All these things out there. You figure out this benefits me, this I'm comfortable with, this I'm not. Like, I was on Snapchat. Of all these things I talk about, I was on Snapchat for like a week and I gave up. I had no idea. I hated it. It wasn't for me. Snapchat might be the coolest thing in the world. It is not for me. And then where something else, I might say, wow, I love Reels or TikTok. So easy to, all my authors should be there. Bobby Shanks, one of my authors, getting millions of views on his undateable stuff on TikTok. Got to be there. Somebody else might say, Dominick, that's the dumbest thing. Hate it. Get it. But we just talk about all these things and, okay, the good, the bad, the ugly. Like Julie said, how could you use it? How could you benefit from it? Or, hey, maybe that's too far. I'm thinking as a publisher, man, the thing that excites me about this Chat GPT, and I get the idea of people using this content to make posts or get ideas for things. But I think the written word, the value of the writer now, the people that work on that craft, man, is that going to go up, because there's a separation. And here's what a computer printed without a heart, without a soul. Now here's this written word. Here's your personal story, this personal story that nobody else can get. Nobody else knows what Tom's been through, what Joyce has been through, some of the things that's went on in Brian's life, Julie's story about passing out when she was on stand, prosecuting her up on stand one day. Nobody knows that story. They're not going to be able to come up with that in a bot or something like that. So,
Dom,
yes.
Everybody knows that story because you mention it like every Wednesday.
It's funny. Okay,
It is so
well,
funny. But I have to tell you, actually, I did one thing, and Jessica doesn't know this. I literally wrote a partnership agreement on ChatGPT this morning because I'm bringing Jessica on as partner of the Media Casters, and I wrote it on ChatGPT, and it was pretty decent. So just saying, there's like so many ways you can use that little sucker. Um, it saved me like a lot of time.
there you go. All right, Julie, thank you. Dr. Tachi, media expert. We're talking about things that are evolving, tips, questions, chat GPT, video production. So I know this is broad, Dr. Tachi, but what do we need to know? Give us a tip or ask this lovely bunch a question. Go on, my friend.
Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but I wanted to go back to how to connect your phone to your. You said you have an older Jeep. Do you have a tape deck?
Yeah, I actually, in my Jeep, I have a little input thing and I have a little thing. It's about as big as my thumb and it connects me to my phone when I put that in.
Okay, because I was going to say that I have an older car too, and so I got the adapter from Best Buy that is you put into your actual tape deck because I still have one, and then just plug that into your phone. So that's for anybody who has an older car that has a tape deck. You can connect your phone that way. Okay, what am I going to tell you today?
What's a tape deck, man?
Yeah, I was surprised. Surprised she did. I thought she was going to say 8-track. Okay.
Yeah, if you're 8-track, you're on your own. But cassette, tape deck, yeah, you can do that. There's probably a way with an 8-track too, if you're crafty enough. But I don't know. I hadn't thought. I'm sorry. I was doing stuff as I was doing this, so I hadn't come up with something.
Yeah, I knew it was broad, Dr. Tachi. So don't sweat it. I that's why I needed to really reset because we've been everywhere today. We try not to go everywhere, but we have been a lot of places. Besides the fact that I deleted the room somehow or set it up at the wrong time, and at the last minute today, me and Tom didn't even have a room to go to. So I want to just apologize formally for that.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes stuff happens. Okay, go on, Tom.
All good, man. I mean, look, hey, I was late last week because I'm an idiot and I don't know how to tell time. So it's all good. No, I just, I was laughing. If anybody's watching the live stream, I was laughing. I literally like covered my face as Dominick is trying to describe how he connects his phone to his radio or to the speaker system in his Jeep, and he's talking about things the size of his thumb and a little plug thing, and it's a thing with a thing, and it connects it somehow. And I was just like, I literally just looked at him, was like, "How old are you, man?" Because we're like the same age, pretty much. And I just like it cracks me up because he's like I don't know, there's a thing with a plug and something and it connects somehow, I guess. I don't know. It's and anyway, it was just cracking me up. I was like over here laughing. And also Dr. Tachi, still got a cassette deck. Wow.
Because the car still runs, so I'm not getting rid of it.
No, and that's like, I'm not saying get rid of the car. I've always been of the mind that like you can upgrade parts of a car. And so like my Toyota Tundra, like that's what I drive. I have a Toyota Tundra. I live in the middle of nowhere, and a truck comes in very handy for me. So that's why I drive a truck. But my Toyota Tundra came with like a CD player. I don't know even if it had if it was one CD at a time or something like that, and a radio. And I took that out and replaced it with an Apple CarPlay radio so that I could actually, use Apple CarPlay and use GPS in my car and all of that kind of good stuff. So there are always aftermarket solutions is all I was getting at.
No, I get it. I mean, I guess it depends on how much that matters to you and how much you use your car. I'm working from home, and even when I am driving, it's like that solution for me is good because I do have a CD player, right? It came with a CD player and a tape deck. I have a 2003 Toyota Corolla. So I guess it was just at the time when they were phasing out tape decks. 'Cause really, I wasn't listening to tapes at that point either, but they had one. So I'm like, okay, well, let me use what's here. So I guess if you drive a lot and you want to be able to connect to all these things like Sirius XM, etc., it may be worth it to you to do it. But because I'm not driving all the time, and even when I am, my phone has everything. For me, I'm good just connecting the phone to the car and letting things run off of that.
There you go, Dr. Tachi. Nothing wrong with that. Simplicity. Why can I can be at peace when I'm driving down the road. Hey, I want to say something for the podcasters out here, and I wonder if you guys know this because I retired from podcasting. Well, not really, because me and Tom might make this a podcast, but uh, when I'm in my radio, when I have my iPhone on and stuff like that, I listen to everything at like 1.5 and 1.25. So I'm speeding, I'm speeding up every episode, and I can listen to so many more. So I wonder, as a podcaster, so Dr. Tachi, would you be mad to find out that somebody's speeding you up, or is that all right?
No, I think that's fine. If you can get the gist of what we're trying to say and it's a little bit sped up, it's fine. It's when it becomes distorted that it's like, okay, are you really getting what you want out of it? But I could care less the way you listen to it, how you listen to it, as long as you're getting the message and you're getting the content, whether it's sped up 2, 5 times, whatever, or you slow it down. It's listening should be your experience. So I think sometimes we have a concept of how we want people to see things, what we want for people to get from our choreography, what we want for people to get from our books. But everybody is an individual and they're going to use media the way they see fit and how it works for them. So if it works for them to speed it up, that's fine.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not making anybody mad. So sometimes I do have to slow it down because I'm like, wait a minute. That was a little. Your point is a good one. Sometimes I'm like, did they want to say that like that, or let me slow it down and see how this actually did sound? Was he going for a pause for effect here, or was he speaking faster? So okay, not the smartest guys in the room. Tom, what do you got? Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say it's a tone issue for me. I can't listen to stuff on 1.5 because it changes the tone of everyone's voice and it drives me nuts. I can't and it makes everything very tinny and it just like it's hard for me to listen to. I can't do it. But that's just me. Like I know I have weird hangups about stuff, but like, yeah, I can't do it. I've tried to listen to stuff on 1.5 and I can't do it. Can't do it.
It's music to my ears. And I want to say real quick that my wife watches every video with the sound off. Every video. Like I'm like, why don't you turn the sound on and listen to that? So think about that. Here's somebody, it's everything. She's just watching the caption. So you captioning your videos or are you not? Hey, hold on. We're gonna get to Brian. I think you flashed before. Did you want to say something? Then we're gonna go to Nee. Go on, Brian.
No, I'm all good. Love the conversation and always learning something. So thank you.
Hey, good. See, there we go. Always learning. Okay, Knee's sticking his tongue out here. Okay, I like that. I like that Knee had a little thing on how to pronounce his name. I appreciate you. So, you know how good that makes me feel when I don't mess up somebody's name. So, Knee, what do you got going on? You got a tip or a question for us? Go on, my friend.
Yeah, this show's been really interesting. Though it's been many topics, but then everything kind of hits home. And when you said your wife watches video with the sound off, my wife watches 3 TV shows at a time, and I don't know how she concentrates on even doing one thing at a time, but she does it and she knows what she's watching. So it's always interesting to see how um, she does stuff. But then, yeah, I was just listening. I'm really enjoying you guys's show that much, and especially earlier on when you were talking about what you use to connect, and you say it's about the size of your thumb. I was just kind of like imagine how big or how small your thumb is also. So I kept on looking at mine. I was like, what kind of device is that small? Or does he have big thumbs or what? But again, I'm also not the smartest guy around, but I just like enjoying you guys' show. And when it comes to radio, I don't listen to radio because again, my daughter is always talking and she's always with me, especially when I'm taking her to school. So she's always just like asking me 21 questions. She could ask me how many times I love her from for like a 15 minutes drive. She could ask it over 100 times, and then on my way back, it's just like I just want to enjoy the peace and quietness. So not even turning on the radio and just listen to my car's engine just go, and that gives me peace. So I don't even know what station my radio is on in my car. It comes on and it goes off every now and then, which I don't really care about it anyway. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And thanks for having me up here.
Hey man, thanks for being here. And I just pushed with nice compliments like that. I pushed follow. So I'm gonna be I'm in your vortex now. You hooked me, man. So thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir. I need a couple of more follows. No, I'm just kidding.
Give this guy some follows. Come on, least we can do. Give this guy some follows.
no,
Yeah.
no. I've been in Clubhouse. I've been in Clubhouse for 2 years, and I just kind of enjoy the good conversation because, I mean, talking about podcast also to me, I think this is like a live radio show and a live podcast and a live everything that you could get a whole lot of good information out of it, especially with the other gentleman that was talking about confronting people and how doing it was just like, you it's like you having a gumbo this morning, everything poured into one bowl and everyone is getting something out of it, So, yeah.
Hey man, we'll take it. We receive it. So, not the smartest guys in the room. You see, we covered some subjects here. Sloan, what do you have for us? I love this. I love the backdrop behind your picture. I got to figure out how to do that. So I'm going to read. I haven't read a bio yet today, so I'm going to do this. So here we go. Okay, global citizen, former life in the Middle East, Washington D.C., created Martha's Vineyard Noir. I think that's how you pronounce that. Podcast Club, creating Black history on and culture on MV. More about the rich history. The Brainstormer, born thinking outside the box. Work smarter, not harder. Yes. Okay, we got you. So, what do we have going on today? Do you have a tip for us, or would you like to ask a question? Go on, my friend.
Good morning. Good morning. I see my favorite girlfriend, Julie. So she's one of my biggest fans, and my biggest supporters, and I'm one of her biggest fans. So I thought I'd pop in the room. Good morning, everybody. A tip. Oh my goodness. No, I don't have a tip. I loved what someone said about the potential future for cable companies and just going into internet internet service providing, as their main service. I think that's really possible, but I need someone to tell me why their prices haven't gone down yet, though, because I'm old school and I don't want to get rid of cable. I'm not that into streaming. I'm not into binge watching. But I agree. I think it probably is. I thought that was a really insightful comment, but I want to know why the prices are still ridiculous. That's all. But
Greed.
they're dying. They're going down. The ship is going down. Why are you still trying to
Is it because they don't have a new business model and they're hanging on to the customers they have? Let's say if you're looking to grow this year and we're losing numbers, we don't have new people signing up. I guess the only thing they have left is to charge you more money.
Yeah, I guess so. It's really awful because I personally have tried to downsize my video package, my cable package. Instead of this premium, I just get something else. And and the price model drops minimally. It just drops minimally. Now, if I change my internet, it's minimal. So they keep that really high comparatively, and so yeah, it's kind of interesting. But
So
I'm enjoying the room. Thanks for having me on stage.
it's a complicated. There's a the answer to that is complicated. It's complicated, Sloan. I'm the one who talked about how the shift is going towards being solely internet service providers. Right now, they're internet service providers and rebroadcasters. And ultimately, over time, the rebroadcasting side of the business is going to disappear as demand continues to fall off the cliff. And they're going to be solely in the business of providing internet service. And the reason why pricing hasn't really gone down is, like I said, complicated, but really what it comes down to is there's a lack of incentive, right? There's no clear business incentive for them to lower their pricing, right? They essentially have a stranglehold on the market. There's very little competition in cable providers, right? Like typically you live in an area and you have, you have Cablevision, or you have whoever your cable provider is, and that's the only option you have in the area, period, end of story. So if you want cable television, that's who you have to get it from. So there's a real lack of incentive. And then on the other side of that, there's a demand from the shareholder investor side and from Wall Street that they maintain profitability, right, despite decreases in revenue, and that pushes them to maintain higher prices, and in some cases to increase their pricing on their lower level packages. And then that's where they try to do these like bundle things. So they'll do like a Verizon had a thing that was like they were calling like a triple play, right? And some of the other cable providers have this too, where they give you phone, internet, and cable service all for like one low price, right? And if you try to do any one of those things or just two of those things, it's essentially the same price. And this is all the same stuff. They're basically the three package price is their minimum price, and then they're trying to stay as close to that as they can with the other services, even if you only have one or two of them. And so they and the reason they do that, sorry, is to try to maintain profit margin, right? So they can return profit to investors, right, and maintain profits and growth on Wall Street at the price of the consumer, right, at your price, and your pocket, your
Sure,
wallet takes the hit. But
it makes
that's really
sense.
what it boils down to.
Sounds like a polite way of saying greed.
Exactly. Could I add to that?
Go ahead,
Of
Dr.
course,
Tachi, anytime.
especially if
So
you're going to
yeah,
co-sign.
you know I'm about to co-sign. You know that's what I do. I co-sign on everything Tom says. So yeah, 100% with that. It is very complicated. I think the thing that we need to look for. Well, first of all, let me talk about one aspect when it comes to internet and cable versus, for example, like your phone company, like an AT&T. Cable is probably, and not in all cases, but in most cases, it's going to give you more faster speeds. You're going to be able to get more on simply because they use coaxial cable and they're able to fit more copper wires inside a cable than you can fit inside like a phone plug, if that makes any sense. So they're going to charge the sun, the moon, and the stars because they know that. And like Tom said, there is a lack of competition. So there is
Well,
no
but I
incentive.
disagree that there's a lack of competition. That's what I was trying. Something happened with my audio. I But streaming is so much more popular now, and that's
It's
why I haven't seen why I can't understand why the price has gone down yet.
you're right. It's popular, but it's popular with a certain demographic. We still have an overwhelming majority of people that are older, that are not into streaming, that will not switch cable. There are some people you have to really, well, why don't you? Because they don't want to learn a new system. So you've got the people who don't want to learn a new system. So they're always going to keep them in business until, and that was my second point. You have the first generation, the generation of millennials has turned 40. So older millennials have now turned 40, right? And they grew up on cable a little bit, but they also know a world with streaming and where devices make sense. And so as we move on, and these generations who were raised on streaming and devices, they're not going to want to pay a big company for those things and for these types of things. And what's happening is these cable companies are not only refusing to shift, they're also refusing to innovate. They're using basically the same type of technology that they've been using for donkey years. So when people see, okay, I'm not getting more for my money, why would I go with you? And I've never used you anyway. That was like my parents. There's going to be no incentive. So they're going to have to do something soon. And I agree with Tom, where it's just they're going to get out of the content game altogether and become internet service providers solely. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. That's it. I appreciate the input. Thank you for that.
I just wanted to clear something up. Sloan, when I was talking about a lack of competition, I was specifically talking about a lack of competition in the cable broadcast space, right? As a cable broadcast provider. So you're right. You're 100% right. There's tons of competition for consumption and for media, but there is not a lot of competition when it comes to in individual markets when it comes to being a cable service broadcast cable television provider, right? And that was what I was saying is like a lot of times, like if you have Spectrum, right, or Charter or Cablevision or whoever it is, whoever your local cable provider is, they're likely the only option in town for you, right? They're likely the only place you can get cable from. So Sloan, somebody like you who is opting for broadcast cable as opposed to wanting to stream your content, there's probably only one place you can get that from. There's probably only one company that offers that service in your area. And that's why they don't have an incentive to lower their pricing because there's no competition. Right?
Can I say
I'm sorry,
something
go
real
ahead.
quick?
Yeah,
Let's
go
go
for it, Nate.
to Nee, then Dr. Tachi. Go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, I stay in a rural area, right? One of those towns when you're traveling through, you only get gas and don't want to stay there because they don't even have a mall, or the biggest thing they have over there is the Dollar General, not a Walmart. So in those kind of places, still, right? It is still kind of like really difficult because people are still watching HD TV over here with antennas like mounted up. Like really tall. You can hardly get phone services over there, and like everyone is saying, also, you only got that one cable provider doing everything. But I think also FM radios are still a thing for emergencies and whatever broadcasting that happens when the ISP companies all go down. So I think cable companies are still going to stay for places like rural America that, I mean, you only want to stop there and just get gas and just keep traveling along. So I think that's why they are not really pushing hard for the innovation, because I mean, there's always going to be a need of those services for people who don't want to upgrade. And you know, if this is their business and it's like a mom and pop business that they've been using this for, they've been providing these services for a long time, that they're going to stick to it. And then also, with buying rights for air with those other companies and stuff like that, I think that there comes a cost also with with those local TV stations also wanting to still maintain that stand in the broadcasting area also. So cable networks, you know, in order for them to also be able to pay and charge and do whatever they want to do, that's why I still believe they maintain those prices and not being innovative, because they got that monopoly.
Go ahead, Dr. Tachi. What did you have to add to that?
It's interesting because it was almost along the same lines. I think that sometimes when we look at content providing, we really, in the US, we always consider the major cities and the coastal cities, right, where there's no problem basically with reception or getting these things. And we forget that the overwhelming majority of the United States is not developed in the same way that some of the other major cities and coastal cities are. For example, Tom, you live in New York State. We're both from New York. New York City is basically New York. The rest of New York is basically like rural in a sense and small towns. So you only have one big major city. I'm not counting Albany, that's not even really major. But, and then everything else is kind of like, yeah, one or two providers, and that's basically it. Even with the second largest city in New York State, Buffalo, there is only like one other cable provider, and that's it. And that's because there's such a stark difference in population. New York has 8.5 million people. Buffalo has 250,000, and it's the second largest. So you've got a lot of cases like that around the United States where there are just not that many major cities, and so no incentive to develop because of that. But there's also this thing too. A lot of those cities are also losing population, right? But so what's happening is they are giving incentives for, you've seen some towns giving incentives for people like artists, etc., to move there. But people are not going to move there if I can't get basic internet service because I'm a digital nomad or something like that. So we're going to have to come to the reckoning, even these rural places, because cable TV, for those of you who don't know, was invented to bring broadcast signals out to rural areas. That's the whole reason cable was invented. And then they figured they could start charging for it. So that's really when it took off in terms of a monetization strategy. But we're going to have to come to, or that industry is going to have to come to a reckoning of if we can't even, we need to have these services to draw people to keep the towns going, because no town wants to die. So I just wanted to add that in there as well. I release.
I think I think you're 100% right, Dr. Tachi, and Nee, I agree with you in the short term, but I think in the long term, there are too many nails in the coffin already for broadcast cable providers, even in rural areas. You look at the greater proliferation of high-speed internet, especially via wireless means like Starlink and providers like that, as that market segment continues to grow, as the proliferation of high-speed internet continues to grow in rural areas, we are going to see this a continued shrinking of cable broadcast subscription even in rural areas, because there will be other options, because access to the internet will become easier to come by. High speed access will become easier to come by, and it'll be easier for people to stream content rather than having to sit in front of a TV and do it. And as you get younger generations, even in rural areas, who grew up with smartphones, right, they're going to look for ways to consume content on their own terms rather than on a prescribed basis like older generations are used to, or even I was used to as a kid growing up. I'm 44 and I grew up with cable, right? So yeah, I still think in the long term, in the short term, you're right, they're going to hold on longer in rural areas, but in the long term, there's too many nails in the coffin. They're going away. I stand by that 100%. And I'll hand it back to you, Dom.
Okay, let's do this. Not the smartest guys in the room. We appreciate everybody who stopped by today. Thank you. No, we're not leaving yet, Dr. Tachi. We got to talk to Charlie and Ching. Well, Dr. Tachi could be leaving.
No, that was bye to cable.
Oh, bye to cable. Bye, cable. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, come on. I got a cable show, but we're on the internet too. So, okay, Charlie, man, we talked about a lot of things today. Hope you're doing well, my friend. So, Charlie, do you want to give us a media tip or ask a question for us based on these myriad of subjects we've been talking about today?
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I've been in and out of the room today. I'm actually feeling better and life is taking shape again. I'm keeping busy. I don't really have anything really to add, just that, Dominick, I've done something different. I know you're in the publishing business. I know as the longer books come out, the prices drop. But on my personal website, I raised my price, made it inclusive, that I cover everything, and selling my book really well. And the thing is, I learned from this, Dominic, is that my book is taking a journey of its own. Like initially, it sold, whatever it was, 250 copies when it came out from just Facebook and Instagram, and then it just was chipping away. But now I put it on my personal website, and I got, Tom always talks about repurposing, but people are repurposing my videos. And in a 1 week period, I sold over 300 books. So I almost thought it was over with, and then all of a sudden it's taken a life of its own. So I'm really pleased on that. And I see people are taking their time, and I don't even ask them to do it. If they buy it on my website, they're going over to Amazon and leaving a review. And I don't know if you've ever heard anybody say this, Dom, but I'm learning about my book by the readers. I know up to what chapter talks about my life and what chapter is the change, the redemption, and the fact that people are identifying that I'm an imperfect man that kept on trying to get better, and they're identifying what's the stuff in the book. So I'm really pleased on how everything's going, and I will shamelessly give my book a plug, 14th and 2nd. Um, and I believe that anybody that's had struggles with food, gambling, addictions of any type, by the time they're done reading this book, will have a new insight into their life and really value the place they are right now. And when they look over at their neighbors, if they do, and their grass is greener, they will say, I don't want to put that much time and resources to make my grass that green. I'm happy with my grass the way it is. That's all I have today. I will drop the mic.
Thank you, Charlie. Man, you're on point. My dad's a certified arborist and horticulturalist, and like really loves the tree. He'll go out, like really, when we were young, he'd be out like in the woods, just like touching the leaves on the trees and stuff like that. And his answer to that would be that God or nature or Mother Nature wanted there to be dandelions in the front yards of people's houses, that they're beautiful, that they shouldn't be sprayed with pesticides and killed, and that the bees and the birds and the worms all feed off those. So we hear you, Charlie. Man, thanks for the message, and thanks for the lovely reminder. Okay, we are going to cruise along here. Tom, get ready to wrap us up like only you do. But first, we're going to meet our friend Ching. I've been watching all Ching stuff lately. Ching is the best. So, Ching, we're talking tips and questions. And we're not the smartest guys in the room. So what do you got for us today?
Hello, Dominic. Hi, Tom. Hi, Aaron. Everybody, Dr. Hachi and Joyce and me and Charlie. I'm very impressed with your book. I would love to read it. And Sloane. How do I say your name? Sorry, dear. Yeah, everybody. Hi, Sloan. How are you? And we have Keith. We have Ivy. We have Ali. Yeah. What do I have question? My question is kind of related to the statement. I do have I have been doing weekly interview on my YouTube channel, and pretty consistently since pandemic. Today will be 213 episodes. And since pandemic, meaning 2020. Now, do I call myself podcast? Because some people say, "Oh, you have a podcast," and I thought podcast meaning it's just the audio, not because mine is a video. People can see me and my guests chat about whatever special topics we talk about. Mostly musicians, filmmakers, some politicians, and and maybe people talk about wellness. And so, so my question is, am I having a podcast, or am I having a YouTube channel with live interview? Thank you.
Let's go, Dr. Tachi. Joyce, you want to answer that? What do you think, Tom?
I can, unless somebody wants to go first.
It's all you, Dr. Tachi. Go on.
So this is interesting. What I call it is a vodcast, basically, because Ching, you did say there's video involved with it too, yes?
Yes, dear. I do it on YouTube. Yeah, my YouTube channel.
Yeah. So I don't think I've really, and maybe somebody else said it and I just picked it up, but I've been calling them vodcasts because um, it is a podcast clearly where it's set up around the conversation, and when you see it, it's clear that you're either like in a radio studio environment, where the visuals are not necessarily intended to be the main thing, right? You just happen to be having a conversation, and it's an audio conversation, but we also happen to be video taping. So I don't want to say it's not as intentional as a quote show where video is the thing, but it's almost the afterthought. The main point seems to me to be the audio part of it. So with that, I call it like a vodcast because there's video, but it also is a podcast, and the audio is really meant to be the main thing. So I don't know if that's the way you have it set up, but it sounds to me like it's that. Anybody else can take a stab if they would like.
Tom, Joyce, podcasters, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I kind of think to qualify as a podcast, I think you have to do a couple of things, right? One, you have to be available on podcast apps, right? So you have to be available as part of an RSS feed on a podcast app. So whether that's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or the Android the Google Play Store for Android, whatever the case may be, I think to qualify as a podcast, for me to define something as a piece of content as a podcast, it has to be available via RSS feed on podcast apps. So that's number one. But I do also believe that if you're going to have a podcast, you ought to create a video podcast as well, a video cast or a vodcast, as Dr. Tachi was calling it. There should be a video component too. There's no reason why you shouldn't film those episodes and release those videos on different channels as well to help create omnipresence for the brand that is your podcast. So, you have videos you can put out on YouTube. You can use pieces of those to share on social media and other digital media channels. But I think to qualify as a podcast, you have to be distributed via RSS feed on a podcast app to meet that kind of strict definition to be called a podcast. I think you have to do that. That's just my thought.
Question. Sorry, Jane, go ahead.
No, I was just thanking Tom.
So to that end, Tom, do you think that is changing? Because there are, like Ching, an overwhelming amount of people that are doing podcasts via YouTube. And part of the problem, or part of the thing, is the expense, because you have to be hosted in order to get an RSS feed. You have to be hosted somewhere. Now, there are apps like Anchor where you can host your podcast basically for free, in quotes. But if you're looking to host your podcast through something like a Libsyn or a Blueberry or a Podbean, you have to pay for those services. And I think that people are looking to sometimes reduce costs with things, especially if you're not monetizing your podcast, which many people are not. So do you think that definition is changing of needing to generate an RSS feed in order to be considered a podcast?
So yes and no. I think I wouldn't change the definition. I do think people are using a podcasting format and adapting it to a video medium, right? So they're creating YouTube episodic content that follows the kind of format of a podcast, right? So I think it's an adaptation of the format, but that doesn't make it a podcast, if that makes sense, or is clear in any way, shape, or form. Tell me what you think.
I think it is clear, but I think that's going off of the traditional concept of what a podcast is or what they intended it to be. And I think that things, especially technology, changes over time. So even though the fact that, for example, just even with the term TV, we use the term TV, even though, yeah, we're talking about either the actual set or we're talking about the concept of being broadcasted or cable. But now it's included, and I really say content more than I say television, but now it's really expanded to include things like Netflix, etc. Even though we know it's streaming, people still say TV. So I think sometimes that it expands the definitions of what something is expands as technology moves on and gets better and offers us more places to put things. So even though yes, technically it's video if it's on YouTube, even if you have a still and you hear the voice behind it, I would think that the creators of that call it a podcast. And because I've seen so many people say, you can find my podcast on YouTube, and they don't know any different. So whether or not the industry says this is what a podcast is, they're saying it's this. So I think it also comes down to self-definition in a sense sometimes too. Just my thoughts.
I don't disagree with you at all. I got to say though, when I hear somebody, and this is totally a me thing, but when I hear somebody describe Netflix as TV, it's like kind of like nails on a chalkboard for me. It sort of drives me nuts. I prefer to kind of to talk about genres and series, and whether it's a feature length film or it's or a series, an episodic series or whatever, but I don't refer to Netflix as TV. I think the definitions have sometimes people broaden them too far because they're not sure what to call things, and rather than actually trying to figure out what we should call things, they just sort of revert to calling them something else that's not really very accurate. And it just, like, the TV thing drives me nuts, but that's totally a me thing. And I don't mean to impose that on anybody else, but yeah, no, I hear you 100%. I think there are a lot of people who say you can find my podcast on YouTube, and my response to somebody saying that would be, if you're creating a video series on YouTube, it's not a podcast. But that's just me, and I'm going to be a strict definitionalist.
All
Can I
right.
say
So
something?
I want a piece of this. I'm figuring out how to we live stream, so usually I'm looking at Tom, but I went to Google and Googled the definition of a podcast, and it says a digital audio file made available on the internet for downloading to a computer or mobile device. So based on that, well, if that is an audio file, but that's an audio file with so some are just really audio because there's no picture behind it, or it's just so based on the Oxford Dictionary, I don't know. I think it qualifies based on the Oxford Dictionary. Just saying, just trying to be argumentative. Go on, Nee. What do you got to add?
Yeah, I think the definition of podcasting right now is kind of changed. Like also, like Doc had said, the definition of it right now is more or less like you can add your video also into it based upon what you the kind of audience you're trying to reach at. So you be listening to some podcast and they could direct you to their YouTube channel, and they will let you know this is also available on XYZ platforms, right? Spotify also now has a video aspect of the podcast where you only get it on Spotify if you upload it. It doesn't push through the RSS feed, But I think right now it's been, the definition of it has been made different, because like you said, the definition of a podcast, what is the pod? You're carrying it in whatever device, right? And then the cast basically is broadcast, right? Is YouTube a broadcast? I would say yes, YouTube is a broadcast, right? So now the definition is changed. My kids walk around the house and say, "Man, you capping," and I'm like, "Okay, I do have a cap on my head, but what does that mean?" It means someone is lying, and it's like, oh, okay, then I'm not capping. So I think as time goes on, we reinvent words to mean certain things, and even when you go into the Oxford Dictionary, certain things have become English language now, yeah. So the first time I had somebody saying, "Man, you woke," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm so woke, man. Man, I got a cup of coffee and I'm so hyped up." You just got to know the lingua of the um, time. And yes, I'm up in my 40s also, but I think times are changing, and the more people that you reach, the more media that you can use to reach people. Um, to me, I think it's okay. But would I also consider YouTube as podcast? No. Do I accept it as podcast? I would say yes. The more places that you can reach people at, that's what truly matters. But the actual term of podcast, well, it's you carrying in your pod, in your iPad or in your iPod. But right now, nobody even have iPods or no MP3 players now. Everybody has their phone. And how do you want to reach people? That's what I would say really matters.
Thank you, Neiman. And you bring up the point of evolution, which is basically what we've talked about in this room all day long, that the radio's evolved, the television's evolved, the publishing has evolved. So even like you say the word cap, yeah. My kids say cap all the time. My daughter's saying shipping all the time. Everybody's ship. This person and this person we're shipping. You know what shipping means? That means where I guess two people are now dating, that they shipped. So that's what we got going on there. Okay. Dr. Tachi had something to say. Then we're going to meet our friend Kevin, see if he's got any tips for us. And then Tom's going to give us a wonderful wrap up. That's what we got on the agenda here. Dr. Tachi, what do you got for us?
Yes, really quickly, I'll just say that this whole thing that we're talking about now is actually, there's a concept. It's called media convergence. And that's where older forms of media start to get reborn on new forms of media. So just like before we had the concept of vlogging with a V, there was blogging, right? The weblog, where people, it was basically like a diary online, which it still is. But as people got into YouTube, that sense of day in the life became reinvented on video, so it became vlogging. I think that's just what's happening with podcasting, right? There's this media convergence that's happening. So now it's probably maybe time for a new word for it. Like I said, vodcast. Maybe it's time to call it something else so that it is distinct from the audio end of it. Just a thought.
Dr. Tachi, evolving, good stuff. We appreciate you. Tom seems to be agreeing. He's signing off on what you're saying there. He's shaking his head. Oh, and the thumbs up. Okay, Kevin, man, we've been talking about all these forms of media evolving today, not to be scared of them, to use what works for you. Don't use what doesn't work for you. Use what you enjoy. Use what you're comfortable with. Basically, that's where we're at. That was my just to fill you in. But you're up, my friend, if you want to ask a question or share a tip. Go on.
I basically just came up to comment on the question about is it a podcast or not. There are shows on YouTube that are podcast, and then there are things on YouTube that aren't podcast. You can look back in the 40s where there were people filming radio shows because there was somebody filming when they were doing a radio show. Did that stop it from being a radio show? And so my question to Ching would be, can someone just listen to your content, or is video an important component of it? If I just film two people talking, it's still a podcast because people can listen to it and it doesn't take away from the experience. You can add to it by seeing people's facial expressions, but it's still audio is the main component. But there are shows on YouTube where someone's showing you how to surf and they're showing you where to stand on the board. Listening to that does not translate. You're not getting the same experience. But if I'm interviewing Tachi and we're having a conversation, people can watch us have that conversation and people can listen to us have the conversation, and they're both having a very similar experience. And so my question is, can Ching take her YouTube content and just have audio, and can people listen to it and have a very similar experience to people that are viewing the conversations, her interviews? That to me is what makes it a podcast. It doesn't stop being a podcast because someone's filming it, but you can't take everything that's filmed and make that a podcast, because YouTube is a visual medium, but you can take audio podcast and where we're talking about a particular movie or we're discussing art, and you cannot show the people that are doing the talking, but you can be showing the art. You can be showing clips of the film, or you can be showing images from the film that illustrate or further the points of the people talking. And it's still a podcast, but you're giving it more by giving the visuals, and you're showing images of what we're discussing. Or we're talking about a garden layout. We're talking about classic garden setups or hedge mazes. And so we're showing you images of hedge mazes as we're discussing them. So it's adding to it, but it's still audio content because it can be divorced from the imagery and still be a full experience.
Kevin, man, you nailed that. That was some good, some well thought out, and makes me think, yeah, this guy knows what he's saying. Tom, I'm going to say this. I just wanted to go back on something that Charlie was saying before you closed the room out, man. That Charlie talked about his book, and that he released it, sold some books, had some other things going on in his life, and then kind of put it on his website, a little more focus on it, how it took a life of its own. The message was always a strong message. The message is now more people are finding out that it's a strong message. What I wanted to say to anybody, whether podcasting, video, writing books, public speaking, your message is only over when you give up on it. So if you have a message in any of these forums, like, hey, you got one view on something, so what? Keep going, man. And it might be the next week you build on that or something, and now you get thousands. Or you wrote a book and the first 30 years, nobody read it, but you believed in it. And then year 31, Netflix buys it and turns it into the Queen's Gambit or something like that. So I just wanted to say, yeah, in all these things, I think as we evolve, stay the course as well. So, Tom, man, as always, and only that you can do, put a bow tie or whatever on this room today.
A bow tie? Tie it up with a bow?
I didn't feel like saying bow. I wanted to change it up.
But you did say bow. You said bow tie.
That's what I meant, bow tie. I didn't want to say bow. I said bow tie.
Okay. It's interesting that as we went through the room today, we ended up talking about definitions. Because I was actually, when I was out on my run this morning, before we hopped on Clubhouse, before we got into this space, I was thinking about the importance of language and how it shapes perception and intention. And specifically, I'll tell you exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about this idea that, I'm on a mission to humanize the world of business through better communications, right? That's my business, my company's mission, and it's one of the reasons why I like being in this room so much, because it not only provides me the opportunity to help other people, but it provides the opportunity for me to learn from a lot of other folks as well. And so when I think about humanizing business and trying to fix that problem, that massive problem that we have, that we talked a little bit about and touched on in the sort of lack of incentive for cable companies to change their pricing model, one of the things that comes to mind is that often in the business world, we think of people, or we define our interactions with people with words that are dehumanizing by nature. So we talk about customers or consumers, and the way we talk about them are in terms of sales and revenue. And those aren't sort of human characteristics. They're not human traits. They're not things that people do. They are in sort of, by definition, dehumanizing, right? Because it's just all about the data. It's just about the numbers. And one of the things that I like to do, and I do all the time, is I talk about community. And when I talk about my business, I talk about my clients and the community that they form. Because when you talk about a community is made up of individuals. Clients are individuals. They make up a community, and that community is measured in terms of enthusiasm and participation, and those are human traits, right? Revenue and sales are not human traits, but enthusiasm and participation are human traits. And so I just wanted to kind of leave everybody with that the way you define things, the language you use to define things, whether it's a podcast or a vodcast or a blog or a vlog, or your customers or consumers for your business versus the community you build around your business, all of that matters, and it shapes perception externally, but also internally it shapes intention. And I think if we take a minute to make sure that we're always referring to our fellow people in human terms, we'll all be a little bit better off, and business will be a little bit better, and we'll all be a little bit happier working with each other. So that's just my thought for the day. Those were my deep thoughts as I was running through my neighborhood this morning before we got on the Not the Smartest Guys in the Room with all of you. And so, yeah, that was it. I just want to leave everybody with that. Language matters. Make sure you're using human language when talking about your fellow man and woman and non-binary folks. So yeah, that's all I got for today, man. I'm just gonna leave it there. Park the bus, drop the mic. Any other euphemisms anybody can think of. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate all of you guys. Dom is giving me the wave, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks, everybody. Love you guys, and we will see you next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. right here again for Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. Bye-bye.